Good afternoon, everyone. Our time is at 12:06 here at KNDK 1080. This is the Noon Report here as we have a sunny sky and 32 degrees at the studio. Normally we would bring you local regional news here in this window, I guess, time frame, but we're going to bypass that today because we have a very special guest joining us live in the studio, and he is U.S. North Dakota Congressman Kevin Cramer joining us here today. And Congressman, welcome to Langdon, North Dakota. Welcome to KNDK 1080.
Well, it's great to be in Langdon, and it's great to be here. As we were talking earlier, I love radio, and I love it as a communications format. And it's the other thing I love is it's very sunny in Langdon right now, and I know that's not the case in a lot of places across North Dakota. So it's good to be up here.
Southeast part of the state, quite a bit of snow.
Yes, there is.
Today. Yeah. Congressman, we understand the reason you are here is the Cavalier County Farm Bureau is holding a town hall meeting today, dealing with the possibility of an inability to get fertilizer up into our area for Springs work. Now, this has been a very hot issue. I know we just had our Agri-Talk program on. Yes. You were listening to that. We both were. That was a hot topic there as well. What are you going to bring to the table? Are you coming more to listen to concerns, or do you have any news that way?
Sure. Yeah. Well, mainly to listen. I find listening is one of the more productive things a member of Congress can do, and especially if you're a member of the People's House. That said, I think I do have some information that hopefully I can share, and that I'll have the opportunity to hopefully alleviate some of the worst fears. Because we are seeing a little bit of progress. But right now, you're right. I mean, rail service issues and not just rail service, but rail safety issues. I'd say the top three issues in my office right now are rail. And so the timing of this is perfect. It worked out into my schedule to be up here. And I've listened to Leon Peterson on the radio and have heard his concerns. I've read some of the things he's written. So I'm just glad I have this opportunity to hear their specific concerns, because right now, interestingly, the Federal Surface Transportation Board, which is the regulatory body that oversees the railroads, both their economic regulation, things of that sort, they have an open docket that closes late tomorrow. I plan on filing some comments on behalf of North Dakota, and I'll be able to include everything I hear today as part of that filing.
Why is it this year that's such a problem? Yeah. I mean, we talk about the oil trains and everything like that. That's been here for about the last 5 years. So why is it this year such a big change?
Well, you're right. Oil has been prominent for the last 5 years, but it certainly has been growing in terms of the volumes, and which has been adding congestion to the rail for sure. But that combined with a number of other factors that I think everybody pretty well acknowledges, a very late harvest last year, a very wet harvest last year, which added to the stress of things, a very cold winter. And the reason a cold winter is a problem is because anytime I think it's about 15 above zero or below, the pressure to get the brakes working on a train, for example, you can't get pressure all the way to the back of the train, so a full train becomes a half a train. All of these little factors add up to a very major factor. That said, we've got to do better. The railroad has got to do better, and we've got to find a way, first of all, not only to get fertilizer up this spring, which I sense we have a strong commitment from both railroads. The STB did come out with a ruling yesterday, putting a lot of pressure on the two railroads, monitoring their actions there. So I think we're going to be okay on that front, but we want to be diligent about it. But then, of course, the big problem is getting last year's crop to market.
We are 17 miles from the border where we sit here today. There's been some talk about Canadians are going to get fertilizer first or different things there. Yeah. I know you were telling us a nice story where you visited with some folks from Canada on that issue.
Well, I happen to be chairman of the Northern Borders Caucus in Congress, so it provides me a little bit of a pretty good seat at the table. And when the Canadian government recently, and I say recently, time goes so fast I can hardly keep up anymore, but 3-4 weeks ago, they issued some compliance mandates on the CP rail as it relates to agricultural production and moving agricultural products to market. And in that, they put mandatory benchmarks along with pretty significant fines and penalties if they don't meet these mandatory benchmarks. And that concerned me right away. I wrote a letter to the Canadian embassy over to the Ambassador Gary Doer, who people in this part of the country are very familiar with, the former premier of Manitoba. And I had dinner with him the same day that he received the letter. And then he sent a member of parliament over to see me shortly after that. And I just issued my protest saying, this is the kind of a nation-to-nation activity that can result in retaliation. We don't want to have to do that. Our government's not as nimble, but by putting the Canadian farmers ahead of everybody else, that means they're ahead of American farmers, which means they're ahead of North Dakota farmers. So yeah, we've been negotiating back and forth pretty strongly with the Canadian government on that issue.
KNDK 1080 time is 12:11. Again, we're here in the Noon Report, folks. Jake Kulland with you here in the studio. And again, very happy to be joined by North Dakota United States Congressman Kevin Cramer. Congressman, at this town hall meeting sponsored by the Cavalier County Farm Bureau today, 1 o'clock. It's going to be, by the way, folks, in Langdon, the Langdon American Legion Hall. You're going to be there to, you're looking to see the public. You want to visit with some people.
I want to visit with people. I want to hear their stories and their anecdotes. I've heard a lot of them. There's no question. A day doesn't go by that we don't take several phone calls on this topic. A day doesn't go by that I don't talk to somebody with one or both of the railroads, as well as other regulators and other members of Congress on this topic. That said, every anecdote, every example is important to the case, because the Surface Transportation Board did have a hearing last week. The docket is still open, so there's a comment period. I'm going to include everything I hear today as part of my comments, because here's what's at stake. I mean, we can point to all the reasons. We can point to all the excuses if you want. We can point to who's to blame. None of that helps unless we have a solution. And the solution, seems to me, is that either the federal government, the regulators, can impose a solution, or we in North Dakota, working with our shippers and our refiners and our oil companies and our ag industry and the railroads, can come up with a solution, which I think is far better than having one imposed on us. The Federal Surface Transportation Board has a lot of authority. They could impose priorities, as an example. They could set the priorities for the railroad. I don't know that we'd want them to do that. But on the other hand, the oil industry, which again needs this rail to move their products to market, they enjoy a lot of goodwill in North Dakota. Right now, there's a very cohesive, very positive experience with the oil and gas industry, agriculture, and the coexistence of both. But that's somewhat fragile right now. Let's face it. We know that there are farmers losing money. We know there are shippers losing money, and we know they're probably greater than that is they're losing opportunity. It's not just a matter of getting the corn to market from Langdon, or the wheat from Langdon to the Pacific Northwest and meet a vessel. That's severe enough. But what if you lose a customer as a result of it? What about future opportunities? What about basis points as they change if you're selling locally or on the spot? All of that has dramatic economic consequence, and we need to get it fixed.
Well, from everything you know and you've heard, then, how concerned should the elevators and the farmers be on this issue? I mean, should we be? Is it a white knuckle issue here? Should we be chewing our fingernails?
Well, I sense there's a lot of that going on right now, and it's urgent. Let's say that it's urgent. But I've been relatively pleased with the response by pretty much everybody on this. The railroad has committed extra resources, and we've seen them. There are a lot more locomotives up here. There are a lot more cars up here. When I say up here, I say I'm talking about North Dakota. Like 125 more locomotives, 500 more people that BNSF has put on the ground here. All of that's helpful. Of course, the warmer weather is probably as helpful as anything. And we're starting to see the delays shortened. So the delays in getting cars, for example, to elevators, they are getting shorter. One of the things I asked the railroad to do, and they did, is provide me with a metrics every week of their progress, so that we can monitor, and farmers can monitor, and elevators can monitor the delays, how severe they are, whether we're seeing improvement, and we are seeing improvement. So that's encouraging. But it's not going to be a big fix overnight. It's going to take some patience. But by being able to monitor it like we are, it allows us to sort of keep the pressure on the railroad, if you know what I mean. So I'm optimistic. Maybe it's not white knuckle, but it is somewhat concerning, to say the least. But there's the other issue, Jake. I mean, that is, what about reparations when this is all done? What if somebody does lose $500,000 because they missed a vessel? What if somebody does lose an opportunity or a customer somewhere because they couldn't deliver, and that customer had to find another supplier? This would take a whole university of economists to figure out. Right. But we don't want it to come to that.
Do folks in Washington that you visit with, do they realize just how urgent an issue this is?
They do, because they're hearing a lot about it. Remember, next week, for example, Monday, we're very pleased the congressional delegation, Senator Heitkamp, Senator Hoeven, and I are going to be hosting the Secretary of Transportation, Anthony Fox, who's coming out to have a meeting in Castleton on rail safety, and then another meeting in West Fargo. So he's keenly aware of this. We talk to him about it all the time. And then, in our constant discussions with each other, with farm groups, with the oil and gas industry, and with the Surface Transportation Board and the Secretary, people are very keenly aware of the urgency. There's no question about it.
Okay, we wanted to get to some other topics with you too, Congressman. Talk about the new farm bill, if you would, a little bit, and what that means for North Dakota in your words.
Well, the farm bill is. I'm just grateful we got one done, and it's not perfect. And anybody that knows anything knows that perfection's a tough thing to strive for, much less to achieve. But it's a darn good bill. But it has as its fundamental difference between it and previous bills, of course, is that crop insurance is the fundamental safety net in this farm bill. Having eliminated direct payments, crop insurance is the real safety net. But that means that crop insurance offers many more choices for farmers, and farmers have some big decisions to make about how they're going to insure themselves, what products are they going to participate and purchase, and of course, it's planting season is upon us, and the rules haven't been drafted yet. At least they haven't been finished. So fortunately, this year's season will mirror more the previous Farm Bill rules. The next season is when the new Farm Bill rules will really be implemented, and there are different choices, such as whether you choose revenue protection or whether you choose price protection. Whether you're going to purchase supplemental coverage, those kinds of things. So the implementation of the Farm Bill is somewhat an open end, creating I don't want to say anxiety, but a lot of questions. With that in mind, and we'll be announcing here later today, I'm going to be hosting a Farm Bill implementation seminar in Fargo on May 2nd, bringing the two senior staffers from the Agriculture Committee that really drafted, crafted, and negotiated this bill. One is the chief economist for the House Agriculture Committee, and the other one is chief policy advisor to the committee. So they're coming up to Fargo May 2nd. We're going to start at 10 o'clock at the North Dakota State College of Science building up on 19th Avenue there near the NDSU campus. And I expect a lot of crop insurance folks will be there. Perhaps some, depending on when they're in the fields, maybe even a few farmers will show up. Certainly the commodity groups are going to show up, so we can help farmers start weighing their choices in this very new but complicated farm bill.
Again, our time is at 12:18 here at KNDK 1080. We're just in our closing moments now, visiting here in the Noon Report with North Dakota United States Congressman Kevin Cramer. Congressman, I guess, are there any other topics you wanted to make mention to our listeners? We have a pretty big forum here today. Anything else going on in Washington?
Sure. Well, there is. We've had some. We're on a little bit of a roll in Washington. I know everyone thinks we're completely dysfunctional. Of course, I've been there a little over a year now. I went in thinking, why don't these people ever get anything done? And now I'm looking at it and going, it's a miracle we ever get anything done. But we did pass a farm bill. We did pass a budget that we compromised with and negotiated with the Senate. We are operating under regular order. So the next big bill that I think you'll see finished up probably a couple weeks from now is the WRDA, the Water Resources Development Act, which has a lot of implications across North Dakota relating to flood protection and things like that. Certainly, we expect the president will be signing here any minute, if he hasn't already, the flood insurance reform bill that we passed earlier with the House and the Senate. So we are seeing some good things. The next big thing, I think, is going to be the highway bill. As soon as we get the water bill done in a couple of weeks, we'll take up the highway bill. As you know, the current funding formula expires at the end of this fiscal year, so in September, we need to be able to have enough resources to build our highway infrastructure.
And by the way, we're looking at your website here as we talk to you. It brought up a topic. I'm from Williston originally.
Yes.
How many calls, how many letters do you get about the Keystone Pipeline?
I get a lot of letters and calls about the Keystone Pipeline. It's an issue near and dear to my heart, of course, as it is to a lot of people. That Keystone XL pipeline would put 100,000 barrels of Bakken crude into it to get to the Gulf Coast. That would free up a lot of space on the railroad if we could get that thing done. This is the longest studied pipeline in the history of the world. We're going on 6 years, and for some reason the president just can't seem to pull the trigger and approve it.
Wow, okay.
It's crazy.
Congressman, anything in closing like to say to our listeners
No.
here? I mean, obviously, you hope to see them in person.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
If you have time, and I realize that some people have other things going on in the afternoon, but yeah, being over at the Langdon American Legion at 1:00 with the Cavalier County Farm Bureau to talk about the rail, but any other issues as well that people might want to bring up. But it's fun to get to this part of the world. My wife is from Kandu. My dad is from Kandu, so that's not so far from here. I'll honk when we drive through here on the way back home. So it's good to get up in this part of the state. It's interesting to see how much snow you still have in those shelter belts.
It's going to be there for a couple of days, it
It
looks
is.
like, too, I
It
guess.
is.
Congressman, thanks so much for
Thanks
stopping
for
by
the
here.
opportunity.
We
My
very much
pleasure.
appreciate you visiting with us, and I know our listeners do as well. And we hope you enjoy the meeting here today. We hope, you're not, you're there to help everybody today,
I'm not
right?
the enemy.
Yeah, there we go.
I'm not the, but I'll be the therapist if necessary.
Okay, sir.
No, it's a great opportunity. Thank you.